So this is how to become a 5-minute expert on war photographer. Now, the context of the poem is important. It mentions a lot of recent conflicts. So we know it's quite a modern poem, talking about Northern Ireland, Lebanon, etc. And the speaker, different to the poet is Carol Ann Duffy, but the speaker is a man who is discussing his experiences as a photographer in a war zone. Now, photographers are press, so they're protected in war zones. They're not meant to be targeted. This is not the perspective of a soldier. So in a way, that gives the photographer a lot of safety. He's an outsider. He's there to do a duty. He's there to show the outside world what's really going on in the conflict. But the trauma is discussed because he's really disconnected. He's not a victim of war, can't fully connect to them. He's not a soldier, can't fully connect to them. But he's also not similar to the people at home because they don't understand the horror that he sees. So a lot of the poem is about him feeling very isolated and him feeling very alone. And that's important to note when you look at all the quotations that are important. So let's have a look at these then. So the first one, as though this were a church and he a priest preparing to intone a mass. Now this simile, and we know it's a simile because it's got the word as in it, compares the development of the photographs to a religious experience. So this suggests that he feels that spiritual connection to all the suffering because he's been there for years, he's witnessed it for years. Now, during Mass, when a Catholic takes Mass, the priests pray over, there's a typo there, the bread and the wine, believing it then becomes the body and blood of Christ. So comparing it to a Mass is like saying the photographer is making the film into something incredibly special, incredibly spiritual, incredibly important. Now, then we move on to another biblical reference. This is an allusion, and this phrase is used to show how fragile human life is in the Bible. So all flesh is grass, and it shows how human life can fade and wither like a plant, and it shows the photographer has realized how temporary life is. And again, linking that to sort of the Christian imagery, linking that to the idea that he is having this sort of spiritual experience because he feels very connected to what he does. Now, then we've got this famous reference to fields which don't explode beneath the feet of children running in a nightmare heat. This is a reference to a famous photograph called The Terror of War, which shows a screaming 9-year-old girl running from a strike by American forces in Vietnam. The image is incredibly powerful, and it really links into this poem because it focuses on the power of war photography and what it does. The nightmare heat reflects the brutality and the agony of war. And the reason that Carol Ann Duffy is probably referencing this is because it's a really emotive image. It was designed to show how war was affecting the most vulnerable. And it was such a powerful image that really turned the tide of public opinion. So people started to think more negatively about the Vietnam War, especially in the press, because of what they had seen now. So the structure of the poem is set out in a regular 6-line stanza, so A, B, B, C, D, D rhyme scheme, and that regularity could reflect his desire to order what he has seen. So he does talk about setting all the photographs out in ordered rows because he needs to kind of make sense of what he's seen. He's sort of trying to organize everything so he can get it clear in his head. So he's developing the truth, and that's what he's saying in his mind. And the caesura and enjambment throughout the poem breaks up the structure a little bit, creates pauses. It might be sort of reflecting how difficult it is to relive these experiences. And ultimately, like what we said at the beginning, he doesn't feel connected to anyone, and he doesn't feel connected to anyone at home. There's quite a lot of references to this, but if we look at the last lines from the poem, he stares impassively at where he earns his living and they do not care. So we've got the adverb impassively and the verb stares, which shows how disconnected he is. There's this dismissive tone in where he earns his living. Rather than calling it his home country, he doesn't feel like he belongs there anymore. He just sees it as a place where he earns money, not a place that he feels connected to. And when he says they do not care, it's interesting as well that he talks about the people at home like they're separate to him. Because again, he can't connect with them anymore. He doesn't think they understand, and he doesn't think they empathize. So he feels a lot like an outsider. And that's your 5 minutes on war photographer. That's everything you would need to know for an essay. It's a really lovely one, again, to connect to the point of view of the outsider. So kamikaze, poppies, they're lovely to compare it to. Also remains, just talking about the long-lasting effects of war. So if you haven't already, check out my videos on those poems too. Like and subscribe.